Chirag and welcome to this video. This video is based on one of the subscribers' request, which is about how to secure and access the AWS Lambda function URL using the AWS IAM authentication type. If you are not aware of what the AWS Lambda function URL is, then please refer to my video on how to configure the AWS Lambda function URL, and the link to that video is in the video description. So back to the topic, what does AWS IAM authentication type mean when enabled for AWS Lambda function URL? It means that only authenticated IAM users or roles can invoke the Lambda function via the function URL. If they are not authenticated or do not have the necessary permissions, then they will not be able to invoke or access the Lambda function via URL, and they will be greeted with an error message like forbidden 403. This is going to be a hands-on video. So we will start by creating the Lambda function with basic Lambda permissions, and those basic permissions will only have permissions to create and write the logs to the CloudWatch. At the same time, we will enable the function URL from advanced settings. The next step would be to create an IAM user. Then we will provide permission to the given IAM user to invoke the AWS Lambda function via the function URL. I will be creating the new IAM user just to demonstrate things end to end, but you can also experiment with the existing IAM user. So now let's jump to the console and navigate to Lambda Management Console and create the Lambda function. So once you are within Lambda Management Console, click on Functions from the left panel, click on Create Function, provide the function name. I will type function URL hyphen AWS IAM demo. I will select runtime as Python 3.11. Within permissions, we are going to select the first option, that is create a new role with basic Lambda permissions. And then within advanced settings, we are going to enable function URL. So you need to check this box. And within authentication type, we are going to select AWS IAM. And then we are going to leave rest of the option as it is and then click on create function. So here we have successfully created the AWS Lambda function, and at the same time we have also enabled the AWS Lambda function URL. And as you can see, under function overview pane, we are able to see the function URL. So you can copy this URL and you can invoke this Lambda function using the same. Now as a next step, we will navigate to IAM Management Console to create a new IAM user. So once you are within IAM Management Console, click on Users from the left panel, click on Create User, provide the username. I will say Test Lambda. Here I don't want to provide user access to the AWS Management Console, so I'm not going to check this box. Click on Next. Within permissions, I am not going to attach any permission as of now. So click on Next and then click on Create User. So here we have successfully created the user, that is test-lambda. So let me open it. Now if we were to access the Lambda function via function URL, when the AWS IAM authentication type is enabled, we will require AWS security credentials. So let's generate the access key and secret key for the given or the said IAM user. So for that, open that particular user, click on security credentials. Scroll down to access keys and click on create access key. Here I will simply select other, or you can also select a command line interface and then click on next. Provide the description tag value if you want, then click on create access key. So here we have successfully retrieved the access key and the secret access key. So now what we are going to do is we are going to try to access the Lambda function via function URL using Postman, using this access key and the secret access key. So let's open Postman. So within Postman, we are going to make the GET request. So for that, we will require the function URL. So let's go to the Lambda function and copy the function URL. Paste it over here. Click on authorization. From the drop down, select AWS signature. And here we need to copy and paste the access key and the secret key. So go back to IAM, copy the access key, paste it over here, copy secret access key, and then paste it over here. Within AWS region, we are going to say US East 1, and within service name, we are going to mention Lambda because we want to access the Lambda service. Now as the next step, we are going to click on send and make a request. As you can see, it returned the exception saying 403 forbidden because currently this IAM user or this IAM entity does not have permission to invoke the Lambda function via function URL. So as a next step, we need to provide the necessary permission. Now there are two ways to provide permission, which is either via identity-based policy or resource-based policy, and I will show you both. The basic difference between identity-based policy and resource-based policy is that identity-based policy are directly attached to IAM users, groups or roles. And in this case, we will attach it to the IAM user that we have created. Whereas resource-based policies are directly attached to resources, which defines who can access that particular resource. And in our case, the resource is Lambda function, where we will define who can access this Lambda function via function URL. So ideally, to successfully invoke the Lambda function via function URL, the said entity must have invoke function URL permission. So let me first start with identity-based policy. So navigate to IAM Management Console. Now here we are going to create a policy. So click on Policies from the left panel, click on Create Policy. Here I am going to select the JSON view. So this is the skeleton of the policy that we have. The effect that we want to apply is allow. On which action we want to apply that effect, that is Lambda invoke function URL. So under add sections on the right panel, you can search for Lambda, select Lambda and search for invoke function URL and then check the invoke function URL checkbox. Under resource, we are going to click on add a resource. Within service, select Lambda function, resource type will be a function, and then go back to the Lambda function, copy the function ARN and paste it over here. And then click on add resource. So here we are saying that allow the invoke function URL action on the particular function that we have defined as a part of the resource to the IAM user or identity to which we are going to attach this policy. Okay, so this is basically the identity-based policy that we are going to attach to the test-lambda user that we have just created. So let's click on next. Provide the policy name. I'll say function URL lambda and then click on create policy. Now once the policy is created, click on users, open the user that we have just created, that is test-lambda. Click on add permission. Select the third option, that is attach policies directly, and search for the policy name that we have just created, that is function URL-lambda. And then click on next, click on add permissions. Now we are going to test the invocation again using the postman. So go back to postman, click on send. So as you can see, now the Lambda function is returning the response with status code 200 along with the message saying hello from Lambda. So that's the default message that Lambda function is returning. So if we look at the code, then here we have the message saying hello from Lambda. So maybe instead of that, I will simply say hello from srce cde, and then I will click on deploy. Let's try to re-invoke, click on send, and here we have the updated response. So this is how you can attach the identity-based policy to the particular IAM user or IAM role to allow that particular user to invoke the Lambda function via function URL. Now as a next step, I will show you the resource-based policy, but before that, let me remove this permission or remove this policy that is attached to this particular user. So select that policy, click on remove and click on remove policy. Now let's quickly try to re-invoke the Lambda function via function URL. So as you can see, now we are getting a response that is 403 forbidden because now this IAM user does not have permission to invoke that Lambda function using this function URL. Now to define or add the resource-based policy, we need to navigate to the Lambda function that we have created and then click on configuration, scroll down to permissions and then scroll down to resource-based policy statements. Over here, you need to click on add permission, and within edit policy statement, we are going to select the third option, that is function URL, which says grant permissions to invoke your function through the function URL. Within auth type, we are going to select AWS underscore IAM. Within statement ID, you can provide the random string. I will say statement 1. And within principal, you need to copy and paste the ARN of the particular user to which you want to provide the access. So go back to the user under IAM management console, copy the ARN of that particular user, go back to the Lambda function, paste it over here. The action that it will allow is invoke function URL. And once you are done with this configuration, click on save. Now here we have successfully defined the resource-based policy that allows test-lambda user to successfully invoke this lambda function via the function URL. So now let's again test it out. Go back to Postman, let's click on send, and as you can see here we have the response with status code 200, that is hello from SRCECDE. Okay, so this is how the identity-based policy and resource-based policy can be used to provide access to the particular IAM users or entities. Now here we saw that we were able to invoke the lambda function via the function URL successfully using the access key and the secret access key. But here there is a risk that these keys might get exposed and misused. So the more promising way is to use temporary credentials which basically get expire after a certain time. So here we are going to use AWS Security Token Service to create and use temporary credentials. And it is very simple to generate. All you need to do is open the terminal, assuming that you have already installed AWS CLI. Now once you open the terminal, execute a command, that is AWS configure. Now here you need to provide the access key and the secret access key of that particular user. So go back to the IAM management console, open the user, that is test lambda, and here is the access key and the secret key of that particular user. So copy the access key, paste it over here, provide the access secret key and paste it over here, say enter. The default region name is US East 1 in my case, enter, enter. And here we have successfully configured the AWS CLI. Now as a next step, we are going to execute another command which will generate the temporary credentials for us. That is AWS space STS, that is Security Token Service, followed by get session token, followed by optional parameter, that is duration seconds. So duration seconds define that how long this temporary credentials should stay active, and after that point this credential will get expired. So we will simply say 900, that is I guess 15 minutes. So after 15 minutes we want this temporary credentials to expire. Okay, and press enter. So here as you can see we have the temporary credentials. So here we have the access key ID, secret access key, and the session token. So whenever we use temporary credential, we also need to pass the session token along with that. So let's copy this access key ID, go back to Postman, paste it over here. Same thing will be for secret access key, paste it over here, and then we also need to provide the session token, that is over here. So let's copy this, paste it, and let's click on send. So as you can see, we are successfully able to invoke or access the lambda function via function URL using the temporary credentials. Now if I add some dummy value within session token and try to invoke this URL, then it's going to throw an exception saying the security token included in the request is invalid. So ideally after 15 minutes, you will get a response or message saying that this credential or this security token is expired. So you need to regenerate your temporary credentials in order to access that particular Lambda function via function URL successfully. Okay, so let's try again. Let me paste the actual value of the session token and click on send. And here we have the successful response with status code 200 and the message from the Lambda function, that is hello from srcecde. So guys, this is how you can leverage AWS IAM authentication type along with Lambda function URL in order to provide the secure access to the IAM users or any other entities. So guys, that's all for this video. Until that time, if you want me to do tutorial on any use case or service, then please leave them below and I will try my best to come up with a tutorial as soon as possible. And if you have any queries or comments, then again please leave them below and don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel, and see you next time.